That's life. These things are sent to try us. You have to take the rough with the smooth. That's the way it goes. This lament, whose weft unites the most diverse conversations, has so perverted our sensibility that it passes for the commonest of human dispositions. Raoul Venegem. Once we accept power's perspectives, we can be safely let loose in a world filled with people who accept the same perspective. That way, by our conversations, relationships, advice, common sense, and our simplest everyday dealings, we engage in the democratic construction of social illusions. The spectacle is not a collection of images, but a social relation among people mediated by images. Guy Debord. Most people will tell you that they aren't fooled by advertising and that they don't believe all they read in the newspapers or see on television. We should not cynically dismiss these claims, even when we see them continue to uncritically consume the advertised products, read the newspapers, and watch the television. To do so would be to be totally misunderstanding the nature of propaganda in spectacular society. The details don't matter as long as we see things through the eyes of power. As long as we remain positively passive and receptive towards the overall design. We have only to look around the world to see how societies differ in detail. But no matter how they differ in detail, be it in London, Washington, Moscow, Peking, Tokyo, Havana, Cape Town, or Sydney, the perspective is the same. Everywhere, it's hats off to power, work, sacrifice, and inauthenticity. All power preserves itself by the construction of illusions, by the perpetuation of a massive confidence trick. Violent acts of repression by the state are designed to make an example of those who dissent. As real as these acts of repression are to the individuals and groups who suffer them, in terms of society as a whole, it is a bluff. No police force or army in the world could hold down 1/10 of its population by force alone. A.S. Neal recalled an incident he witnessed in a railway compartment. A small child was pestering its mother to be allowed to play in the corridor of the train. The mother finally put an end to the child's pleas by saying that there was a policeman in the corridor who would lock up naughty children caught playing there. Neal reflected that, had the child gained the courage to open the door, it would have made two very important discoveries. There is no policeman in the corridor, and Mummy is a liar. In the democratic countries, dissent is managed via the ballot box, a system which offers any choice that keeps power intact. If you don't like the government, you can vote for an alternative government, but you can't vote for an alternative to government. Every day through schools, newspapers, and television, power reaffirms its perspective. It is difficult to see daily life from any other perspective because all our reference points have been given to us by power. Alex explained as well as she could that she had lost her way. "I don't know what you mean by your way," said the Red Queen. "All the ways about here belong to me." A mass media allows for the mass dissemination of illusions. Where reality contradicts the illusion, it is either ignored, ridiculed, or simply changed to make it fit the desired image. Obvious errors only highlight how irrelevant the information was in the first place. Even in extremes, it cannot see itself as a participant in real life. Paul Vogel, who was on the last plane out of Da Nang, South Vietnam yesterday. Only the fastest, the strongest, and the meanest of a huge mob got a ride in the last plane from Da Nang yesterday. When the real world changes into simple images become real beings and effective motivations of a hypnotic behavior. Debord. A subject is presented with a set of circumstances. They are all bad. Under these circumstances, the subject consciously chooses what he or she feels is the lesser evil. The aim of the controller is to keep the tension surrounding the choice at a high level, so that no alternative choices outside those proposed are offered or perceived. It is the equivalent of locking someone in a mental box. The perfect controlled environment. Once such choice is made, the next set of choices can be presented. As long as the choices are regulated, that is, the subject or subject population perceives that it has only the set of choices presented, the outcome is also regulated. It is important that you, the victim, feel that there is no cause and effect in this world, simply information. From here on in, there will be no release from the tension, only an ever-escalating series of crises. Lonnie Wolf. People are made spectators of their own lives. The media validates reality. As if it is not enough that life is experienced, it must be seen to be experienced. Democratization of the image. The spectacle is sustained not by the images produced by the media, but by us, when we produce these images in our daily life, which, in turn, are reported by the media as examples of reality. Our conditioning into accepting the morality of capitalism begins at an early age. Propaganda and advertising encourage us to identify our own interests with those of the spectacle. It is a mark of the level of our conditioning that when confronted with such twaddle, we don't all roar with laughter. The spectacle revives the dead, imports the foreign, and reinterprets the existing. The time span required for things to acquire the proper quaint banality continually decreases. The original is marketed simultaneously with its spoof, from which it is often scarcely distinguishable. Aesthetic discussions increasingly center around the simple question as to whether something is a parody or not. That's Ken Knobb. The basic tautological character of the spectacle flows from the simple fact that its means are at the same time its goal. It is the sun which never sets over the empire of modern passivity. It covers the entire surface of the world and bathes endlessly in its own glory. Capitalism means progress, and progress can lead sometimes to inconvenience. Dr. Adolf Jahn, president of Hoffman La Roche, in a television interview about the Seveso disaster. That's capitalism. That's its morality. To save the economy, we must buy anything. That was President Eisenhower. The economy can stop making us consume more and more, and to consume without respite is to change illusions at an accelerating pace which gradually dissolves the illusion of change. We find ourselves alone, unchanged, frozen in the empty space behind the waterfall of gadgets, family cars, and paperbacks. Whatever happens, don't do anything until you hear from the authorities. Your safety cannot be guaranteed if you take it upon yourself to act. Stay in your homes, cars, or shopping centers. If you stay at home, watch television, or listen to loud music. During the day, remember, there is no safer place for you than on the job. If you are too young to work, go to school. For your own good, do as you are told. The authorities remind you, the streets of your community are not safe. So if you must leave your home to seek entertainment or diversion, drive. Do not walk to your destination. If you find yourself unexpectedly on the street, on foot, speak to no one. Remember that the maintenance of order rests solely upon your willingness to follow instructions. Modern citizen. The consumption of hysteria has become a principle of social production, but one where the banality of the goods keeps breaking the surface and letting loose unnecessary violence. The violence of the man or woman who has been given everything but finds that everything is phony. Postscript to On the Poverty of Student Life, Strasbourg Situationists. The enemy is identified and protection is offered. The servants of power use their initiative, and power makes it legitimate. I've come about the job for a cold, calculating thug. You're hired. Any questions? Just one thing. Isn't it illegal? Don't worry. We'll give you a funny hat. The new voice of authority, but the same old song. Why should you make the laws? Why not the rest of us? Because I've got the only laser gun. That's why. The society of the spectacle had begun everywhere in coercion, deceit, and blood, but it promised a happy path. It believed itself to be loved. Now it no longer promises anything. It no longer says, what appears is good, what is good appears. It simply says it is so. But for all its violence, the spectacle knows that its only real security lies in the construction and maintenance of myths and illusions. First and last, it is a show. Searchlights swung across the heads of the multitude. One recognizes nothing but a gray mass, shoulder to shoulder. A radio link established exact synchronization with all other assemblies throughout the nation when Goebbels proclaimed a minute's silence for a mining disaster, which had most opportunely occurred that very day. Hitler then spoke in praise of the dignity of labor and of how the worker was to be the essential factor in the new Germany. 1.5 million voices joined in singing the Horst Wessel anthem. Before presenting Hitler to his vast audience, Goebbels saw that the sun would soon break through the clouds. He timed his own speech so that the God-given light should stream down on Hitler as he took his place on the speaker's rostrum. The Tories are developing a formidable weapon in their election campaign, the sincerity machine. It was used with considerable skill by Mrs. Thatcher when she addressed an enraptured 3,000 Scottish supporters in Perth on Friday. The sincerity machine uses an offstage camera to transmit the image of a rolling script to 2 television sets lying on their backs in front of the speaker and concealed from the audience by 2 open-topped blue boxes. The picture from the screens is reflected up to a couple of clear plastic lecterns placed slightly in front of and to each side of the speaker. The images, invisible to the audience, can be seen by the orator who reads them out while seeming to stare through the lectern screens. The sincerity machine could prove to be crucial in a campaign which all parties concede will be fought mainly through television. Elections are great spectacles where illusions, myths, and images struggle for our applause and acceptance. The choice is illusory because whichever government we choose, we always get upholders of the 3 basic rules: work, consume, respect authority. Police swinging bamboo clubs yesterday attacked a peaceful demonstration of blind and disabled people who were trying to present the Prime Minister, Mrs. Gandhi, with a petition for job and education opportunities. About 100 people were injured, 25 of them seriously. When it was over, dozens of demonstrators, most of them blind and many of them handicapped in other ways, lay bleeding in the street near Mrs. Gandhi's home. Reporters who saw the attack said the police waded into the crowd. The blind groped about the street in panic, falling over one another. Others on crutches tried to hobble away, but not quickly enough to avoid the clubs. The demonstration was organized to coincide with the International Day of the Disabled. Police said the demonstration was illegal because the streets near Parliament and the Prime Minister's residence are out of bounds to demonstrators. A government which respects the dignity of every single man and woman, regardless of caste, creed, or ideology. And above all, a government which understands your concerns, your problems, your hopes, your dreams, and your reason for living. From Mrs. Gandhi's election address. A manifesto is issued to get votes, and it is not to be taken as gospel. Lord Justice Denning. Although power is sustained by the threat of violence, it always applauds nonviolence in its opponents. It offers reasonable, civilized negotiation because there it is fighting on a terrain where, if it cannot always win, it can at least postpone defeat indefinitely. At least 2 factors favor establishments using the tactic of postponement. 1, the agitators may become impatient and reckless. If they break a civil law, they can be jailed. 2, the agitators may be patiently persistent and wait, which allows the establishment to defer indefinitely. If an establishment elects a strategy of avoidance, a number of tactics are available to deal with the ideology and its proponents. The decision-makers themselves or their representatives may choose, for example, a tactic of counter-persuasion, entering into a discussion with the leaders of an agitative movement in an attempt to convince the agitators that they are wrong serves a number of functions for the establishment. If counter-persuasion is successful, the threat to the system is minimized. If unsuccessful, the establishment has still gained time and avoided any significant revision of establishment ideology and structure. Hold it, my good barbarian. That's not the way we change society here. We progress through lawful democratic methods. Kneel down. Now, as a member of the lower classes, you ask me to let you get up off your knees. Okay, mate, let me up off my knees. Not bloody likely. During World War II, a bearded, chinned soldier fighting with General Wingate's forces behind the Japanese lines in Burma actually fell asleep while a storm of machine gun bullets splattered around him. Subsequent investigation revealed that this soldier was not merely reacting to physical fatigue or lack of sleep, but surrendering to a sense of overpowering apathy. Alvin Toffler, Future Shock. Many people today have the appearance of shell-shocked soldiers. Communication is dogged with suspicion and misunderstandings. Repression maintains a state of permanent crises. The failed cures, the alternatives that were no alternative, the broken promises, the sellouts, all create a climate of cynicism and apathy. Most of what makes people dissatisfied with their lives is their own moral poverty. They are encouraged on every side to be mean, petty, vindictive, spiteful, cowardly, covetous, jealous, dishonest, stingy, etc. That this pressure from the system removes much of the blame for these vices does not make it any less unpleasant to be possessed by them. An important reason for the spread of religious movements has been that they speak to this moral inquietude, inspiring people to a certain ethical practices that provides them with a piece of a good conscience, the satisfaction of saying what they believe and acting on it, that unity of thought and practice for which they are termed fanatics. The revolutionary movement, too, should be able to speak to this moral inquietude, not in offering a comfortably fixed set of rules for behavior, but in showing that the revolutionary project is the present focus of meaning, the terrain of the most coherent expression of compassion, a terrain where individuals must have the courage to make the best choices they can and follow them through, without repressing their bad consequences, but avoiding useless guilt. Cannot. We need to reverse perspective, to stop seeing things through the eyes of power. Their chronicles of misery bog down our anger in statistics, reports, surveys, and assessments. The threat to the spectacle is neutralized by the creation of a general mood of cynicism, resignation, and apathy. Our revolutionary theory, which concentrates solely on mounting a critique of the spectacle, runs the danger of simply adding to this general cynicism and to the passivity and resignation which that cynicism engenders. It is not enough to analyze the misery of daily life and its causes. We must speak of our dreams and desires and provide examples of life as it could be. We must start to build the world we want now, in our relationships, our interactions and interventions, and in the way we conduct ourselves in our daily lives. The only way to develop a revolutionary theory is to try to put it into practice within the barriers that surround us, and against the opposition we will undoubtedly face. Revolutionary theory is developed on the basis of lived experience. Its goal is the total suppression of the commodity spectacle. A revolutionary movement based on the development of a revolutionary theory is participatory. A movement based on an ideology is almost as participatory as a paint-by-numbers kit. Revolution is a process, and it is a process that can be started now. Under each result, and under each project of an unfortunate and ridiculous present, we see inscribed the many tekel upharsin, which announces the inevitable fall of all cities of illusion. The days of the society are numbered. Its reasons and its merits have been weighed and found to be lacking. Its inhabitants are divided into two parties, one of which wants the society to disappear. Guy Debord. So I wasn't dreaming after all, Alice said to herself. Unless we're all part of the same dream, only I do hope it's my dream and not the Red King's. I don't like belonging to another person's dream, she went on in a rather complaining tone. I've got a great mind to go and wake him and see what happens. Lewis Carroll, Alice Through the Looking Glass.